Welcome to the Thomson Keefe Show. Our special guest tonight is Shawn Patrick Whittington, aka the Rev.
Rev.
I should be calling you the Rev, right? Rev, right? Not sponsored by Bud Light. I'm having a Bud Light.
Oh, you didn't do that.
I wish I was having a Bud Light, but I'll have some water.
All right.
It's the same.
She's over here Bud Lighting me, man. I don't believe that. On a video that I'm in? It's just wrong.
So the Rev here tonight is going to introduce us to a dish that his mother made?
Yes, this is a dish that my mother, may she rest in peace, she was Brazilian. It's called Feijoada. And I would imagine if you're in Brazil and somebody invites you over to their house and asks you to try some of theirs, it may be different, I don't know. But this is how I was taught to do it. And I got a bag of fresh, raw black beans, threw them out on a table, sorted through them, make sure there was no rocks and pebbles and things in there that shouldn't be in there. They were all dumped in a pot, covered with water, salted real good, brought to a boil, lowered to a simmer, and then they simmered for probably 2 hours. While that is taking place, I take a Brazilian sausage called linguiça, and that needs to be cooked. I dice that up in a little bit bigger than bite-sized pieces, 1 to 2 inches. Cut that up. I toss the linguiça in with the beans, and that cooks with the beans for an hour and a half, 2 hours. That adds a lot of flavor. The linguiça is very chorizo-like, but not as spicy and a little firmer of a sausage, firmer of a meat. Delicious, but it's got to be linguiça to be authentic. Now the meat varies. Some people buy the pre-cubed sirloin meat, steak tips, cubes for stew meat, and we'll throw that in there. I believe my style is a little more traditional. It's very large pieces of country-style pork spare ribs. Some of the pieces don't have the bone, some do have a small bone attached. I cook those separate. I marinate those ahead of time, something simple like a seasoned salt. I'll put a little olive oil, lathered a little olive oil on them, wrapped them in like a cling wrap overnight for 24 hours. I just seared the meat in a pan to get some color to it, start the cooking process of the meat. Then the meat all went into the beans with the beans and the sausage and all that. For that to also cook with the dish to add extra flavor, the meat absorbs some of the seasonings and the beans and sausage to absorb some of the flavoring of the meat. This is served over traditional white rice. Some people, in the mid part of the States will use a Cajun dirty rice. Some people in the Southwest will use a Spanish rice. Traditional Brazilians use white rice. You're gonna lay your white rice down. You're gonna spoon some beans over it. Add yourself a piece of meat. This is seasoning, and I don't know if there's a name to it, but it is fresh diced white onion that's been marinating in olive oil and balsamic vinegar overnight, and that gets spooned over your beans once it's on the rice. And that's the dish Feijoada. And I'm going to dish out a plate for the video hostess here, although we do have a house hostess. Brian's wife's with us, and my wife too. We never get out, so this is fun. I'm going to serve Patti, because I want your opinion. I know Brian is full, plus he's got to sing, but I'm going to leave some for him.
All right, I'm going to move my, excuse me.
And then I will probably make another plate for the house hostess.
Rest assured, this smells absolutely delicious.
And you can get more, so I'm going to
Okay,
start
you
with
don't have to put a lot of rice on this. I'm not going to eat a lot because I have
You like
the same too.
like a lot of juice or no?
Yes, juice.
So I'll use the same
Au
juice.
Au jus.
Nom.
Nom, nom, nom.
Yeah. Look at that. Brazilian big chunks of meat.
I'll say.
Juicy.
Look at that.
Make sure you
Wow,
get at
and
least
beans.
a couple of pieces of
Yeah, got to get some beans in there.
sausage.
White on rice.
In this case, beans on rice.
Beans on rice, hey.
That is a load of food right there.
Oh, don't overload me.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I
you're
won't
right.
be eating all that. Just a few bites so I can sing.
That's a good lot of
And then
food.
after we're done singing,
You know what? I'll take a couple of the sausage back. That is a lot of food.
Sausage giver.
I'm thinking I'm I think I'm serving myself here.
Oops. Yeah, that'll have to be to go for me.
And here's the onion.
No, that's gonna be good. I've had it on lentils before, the balsamic vinegar on lentils.
Yep.
Really good. Tasty stuff. I'm excited.
Now,
I mean, I get to
this is a country
Get to
dish. My
take a
mother's
taste.
from a village called Cruz dos Almas in the north of Bahia, Brazil. It's up in the mountains. They're very devoutly Catholic and spiritual people. The interesting thing about Cruz dos Almas is there's no veil there. The dead walk among the living just like it's a normal thing. Like they're just real people. They just don't know they're dead. So that's how they're raised. But Cruz dos Almas translated means cross of souls. And at one time it was on the Guinness Book of World Records as having the most churches in a town. So it's just a very interesting place. But they're country folk, so they eat with their hands. Like I said, if the sausage is one bite for
about
you,
the
fine.
beans?
If the sausage is too big, cut it. The meat, I just grab the meat with my hand and take a nice bite of it. And so
Oh,
here's
we
your
forgot
knife
the
and fork.
napkins. We forgot the napkins, so I guess
And
I'll
I'll
be
try
nice.
not. I'll drink my water so I'm not staring at you while you eat.
So you're
You
not,
can
you're
watch
not,
This
the
is
video,
Feijoada.
right?
you're not like
Thank
trying to
you.
say that they don't know the difference between churches and Starbucks down there. Is that it? One on every corner?
So this is the sausage.
This is
or is this
the
the
country
meat?
style pork
Oh,
spare rib.
ooh, good.
Ooh.
I'm in heaven. I know you blessed it. I know you did.
Oh, of course.
Because it tastes like heaven. You gotta have a bite, dude.
No, you go ahead. I am literally, I'm still stuffed
Now
from,
you have to try the linguiça.
the meal I had earlier.
Linguiça's
But I will be
imported
trying
from
this later.
Brazil,
Right.
and there's nothing like good linguiça.
Goodness.
Now that's the stuff that's like chorizo. That's
I'm
the,
spilling the
It's
beans.
chorizo-like, but it's not as spicy and it's a little
Yeah.
firm. You know, chorizo kind of falls
It
apart.
does. Yep.
It's real
Linguiça
greasy.
doesn't.
no kidding.
I like the flavor on that. Much better.
So if you're ever in Brazil visiting and somebody invites you over for home-cooked feijoada, accept immediately.
Yes, please.
Obviously.
I would imagine it might come a little different. I know they also traditionally serve like a very similar bread to like French bread, hot right out of the
Okay.
bakery,
Yeah.
along with the meal. Sometimes they sprinkle something over the top called fajina, which is like a ground flour type seasoning that they sprinkle on it sometime. But this is about as authentic as you get unless you change up the meat and go with the stew meat.
Now, your
Or,
mom was Brazilian, right?
Yes.
So
Pork
is this the kind of meals that she would serve
This
when you
was
were
her
little?
favorite dish that she cooked for us on all special occasions.
I was gonna say this is the fancy.
Now
dish.
there is a flip side of the coin to this dish, and I'm not sure if they call it feijoada, but you replace the black beans with black-eyed peas,
Okay.
and you still serve linguiça, but the meat is big chunks of ham.
That
That's
actually,
a killer dish served over rice too.
that sounds
is
like it
awesome.
would be something they serve in the deep south, like Mississippi.
Boom.
Yeah, exactly. Mississippi, Louisiana,
Yeah.
Alabama down there. Because you know they're big on black-eyed peas and,
Absolutely.
and ham and stuff, that kind of thing.
Ham hocks.
Oh yeah, I know that. I was
Pickled pig's
I mean, there's
feet.
I've been down
some
there many
little
times.
things that I'm forgetting. I used to see big old
that kind of stuff is delicious.
chunks of lard in there that my mom. I serve it to myself. My mom said, "No, that is not to eat." She put it back in it.
Yep, that's for
She'd
cooking.
have all kinds of interesting things in there helping it cook. Sometimes she would just throw some pork chops in there.
Yeah.
So you could pull your pork chop out and eat it with your hand too. But
I
this
like
is
that.
about as authentic as it gets.
I like the olive oil and onions.
Yeah, once Sharon made this fresh before we came over. Once she makes a batch of this, it's not good very long. So this will go on everything. This will go on sandwiches
Oh,
later
yeah.
tonight. This will go on my hot dogs.
Well, that's
It'll go
awesome.
on everything.
Awesome.
I'm glad you liked it.
I love it.
And I know you will be honest and say, you know, some people may love this, Shawn, but it's not my thing. But thanks for bringing it
I'm
up.
still
I know
eating.
you would be
I'm
honest.
still eating.
It is.
If I didn't like it, I'd stop eating. But
Exactly.
I can't stop myself.
Okay.
All right. Anything else you're gonna say about this before we?
No, that's it, Mom. Rest in peace, honey.
Yes,
I
thank
love you. I miss you. Thank you for teaching me how to make this wonderful dish, which I continue to have as often as possible. That's why I'm about 100 pounds heavier than I was when I met Sharon. It is what it
Hopefully
is.
she's up there
Yo, she's
having
great
a little
time.
chat with my mom, who's there
She's
as well.
buried right
so.
above my father.
And
at,
my mom.
And your
Memorial.
mom.
And my dad.
Yeah,
Oh,
having a good time,
Yep.
laughing at us right now.
probably. They're probably looking down at us going, "Ah,
She's so
bunch of-
proud.
He
of
forgot
you.
this. He
Yeah,
forgot that.
yeah,
That's
he's
not
so
how I
proud
took
of
you
it.
bunch of
Look at
saps.
that.
What's wrong with you anyway?
My
I didn't
son's
teach
a
you
good
like that."
cook. Come on. No, you're gonna have to pull me away from this because this is really
And I'm proud that this is their show, but for you later that might be watching this off of Reverend Shawn Whittington's Paranormal Ministry YouTube channel, the channel has been up for a while, but I was waiting for us to get together and do this because I want this to be the first film clip on that channel. So I'm very honored to be here.
This will be
You
fun.
guys be the
Honored to have you here.
first channel on.
So it's going to be, this should be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
And this is just the food part. So here in a little bit, we'll get into the book and we'll, talk about that. And
Very good.
We'll
I have
interrogate
not
you.
read it yet, by the way, so I'll be waiting for your explanation.
Very good. Some interesting things have happened in just the last
more?
48 hours. Some interesting things pertaining to the book, and some readers that have purchased it have surfaced, which
Really?
is interesting. Yeah.
Goody.
So
That's
Most
another
of my
book in the
reading
making.
material these days, because I'm still working, I still do the day job thing. So most of my reading material these days is a lot of tech stuff.
absolutely, and I do too. Sharon and I still, our day job is still at the animal hospital. She's
Yeah.
the office manager. I'm a vet tech, and then I've got the ministry work, and I have finished my certification as a spiritual advisor. So I've got ReverendShawn.com, and I've got the Worldwide Bible College and Theological Seminary, still teaching 2 online courses in paranormal studies through
Pretty
the
cool.
Bible
We'll
College.
put all the
So
links in the
we
YouTube.
never get out. This is great to get out. Although we're not, probably won't be here that long. We got 2 circus bears at home locked in a cage that didn't get dinner yet tonight. They see me leaving with this, and they're locked in the cages. They're like,
Those
when
cages,
you get back.
cages will be unlocked.
What's wrong with you anyway, man? You know we want that food.
And I didn't feed them.
Oh, really?
Because I
That
knew I
too.
would be locking them in their kennel for a little while. I didn't want them to have to be able to go out and do their business and not get out there after I feed them. So that's never a good thing.
Right.
You never want a mastiff to relieve himself in his kennel. If the
Oh,
kennel's
boy.
right in your kitchen.
No,
No,
no.
not good.
What am I eating?
Well, this was the one. This was the
Red
one.
sausage?
No.
Really good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that and the slobber and the onions.
Absolutely. You remember the movie The Amityville Horror and the walls were dripping blood?
Oh, yeah.
Mine's dripping drool. You can see it hanging off the corners of the tables and
Off the
corners.
lampshades.
Everything we have is hanging from the ceiling, so they can't get to it. TV,
Christmas tree.
entertainment center's got a big cage around it.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. They're kids, and it's
It's
just
child-proof.
basically,
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Child-proof in your house
absolutely.
for your dogs. You guys, we've been sitting here talking all this time, but I want to tell you, even though I didn't try the food yet, I will be trying it. But this smells absolutely delicious, and she can attest at this point, I think, because she hasn't been
I
able to
keep
leave it
going.
alone.
I keep going, but I gotta sing. So I will
And
be
once
eating
I
the rest of
start,
it
I
later.
can't stop. So.
Okay.
But I want to talk about the book later, and I want to enjoy they're gonna play a song for me that I haven't heard. The only one that ever requested them to play the song, I haven't
doesn't
heard it.
remember it.
If you can remember it.
A song called Last Shanty.
Father often told me when I was just a lad, the sailor's life was very hard, the food was always bad. But now I joined the Navy, I'm aboard a man of war. But now I found a sailor ain't a sailor anymore. Don't haul on the rope, don't climb up the mast. If you see a sailing ship, it might be your last. Just get your civvies ready for another run ashore. A sailor ain't a sailor, ain't a sailor anymore. Killing of our mess says we had it soft. It wasn't like this in his day when he was up aloft. We like our Boston sleeping bags, but what's a hammock for? Swinging from the deck, head or lying on the floor. Don't haul on the rope, don't climb up the mast. If you see a sailing ship, it might be your last. Just get your civvies ready for another run ashore. A sailor ain't a sailor, ain't a sailor anymore. Gave us an engine that first went up and down. Then with more technology, the engine went around. We know our steam and diesel, but what's a manger for? A stoker ain't a stoker with a shovel anymore. Don't haul on the rope, don't climb up the mast. If you see a sailing ship, it might be your last. Just get your civvies ready for another run ashore. A sailor ain't a sailor, ain't a sailor anymore. 2 cans of beer a day, that's your bleeding lot. Now we get an extra one because they talk and talk. We put on our city clothes and find wind above ashore. A sailor's still a sailor, just like he was before. Don't haul on the rope, don't climb up the mast. If you see a sailing ship in mind, just get your civvies ready for another run ashore. A sailor ain't a sailor, ain't a sailor anymore. A sailor ain't a sailor, ain't a sailor anymore.
So we have this book here, written by Shawn.
Didn't we just do this?
Yeah.
Are you feeling deja vu?
Take
So-
two.
So we were talking for like about, what, 30 minutes or so?
Yeah, at least.
And apparently I didn't push the right button, so.
Roll more in a direction of Shawn and his book and where this takes us, you know.
Yes, it's God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry. It's a supernatural and spiritual autobiography by yours truly. It's a lifetime in the making, 3 years of me putting my blood, sweat, and tears down, literally through pen to paper, to get it done. It was inspired by Spirit. I was actually visited by Spirit and convinced that this was what I needed to, the story I needed to tell. And so I'm very proud of it. And I quote, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry is the scariest book I've ever published, end quote. That's Annette New Munich, publisher and owner of Stellium Books, my publisher. My book has caused her to go on to other kinds of books.
Romance?
Yeah. The book
Romantic
is very
werewolves.
scary, but I like to think of it also as a very different kind of feel-good story. Evil doesn't win. In any of the stories in this book, there's some open cases, open-ended things. I leave it up to you, the reader, to decide what you might think have happened after that. But most of the evil encountered was handled and taken care of in the book. So that's a good story. That's a feel-good story.
It's scary.
But
It's scary. I read it. It's scary.
So your question, you had a question.
I have a question. Oh, page 49.
That's the one.
Page 49, the haunted pillow.
The
Can we talk about the haunted pillow again?
well, the haunted pillow falls under the whole
Objects.
possessed objects things, and so many people nowadays want to buy antiques, things of that nature. Be very careful. Why? And it's usually lower level energy, malevolent, God forbid something worse, type of energies that attach to antiques. And once you bring them into the house, you're going to have some issues. So be careful buying antiques and going into that endeavor. And that pillow was, don't know why, whatever was attached to it was attached to, but
It's a good read. Page 49.
But going back to what we were talking about earlier, you know, and you mentioned something about this, the whole thing about these low-level entities that attach themselves to objects, and you know, I mean, looking at that, why would they do that? Why would anything with any kind of an intellect whatsoever want to attach itself to an object? It makes no sense.
see, there's just so much we don't know.
Yeah.
What are the rules on the other side?
Yeah, no
we
idea.
don't know. So that is scary, and just have to be very careful. It's like the gentleman from India that reached out to me because his wife loves antiques, bottles, and lamps, and she was cleaning this antique bottle in her kitchen the other day, and husband says she's a completely different person. It's not her any longer. And I have mentors I reach out to. Many times they will tell me if they think I'm in over my head and I should pass on a case. For example, I have a Dybbuk box case that came across my desk, and we don't know anything about the Dybbuk. Some of these spirits are so old and ancient and just pure evil. They had no fear of God. Me showing up at a location where one's at is just pure provocation, and I don't provoke. It's one thing I don't like to do. Some demonologists believe in religious provocation. I don't. Why poke the bear? It's already provoked that I just showed up. So my motto is a lot of people just believe that they're helpless and there's no hope, and they've lost all faith, and they don't know who else to turn to. So I just basically go and let them know, ultimately you have the power to make this thing move out of your life. But you have to have faith in that you do have the power. I help them draw their line in the sand and put my arm around them and stand up against the bully. And that's really, in many cases, all it needs. but you never know. Be careful what you say, what kind of words you throw out into the cosmos, because you never know what's floating around, watching and listening. You might say something that gives this thing permission, or think it has permission to attach to you.
Here's
You
the
like
thing.
the book?
I love the book. I just want to know, how did you go from being a pop and lock dancer to a reverend?
Back in the day, yeah.
To a reverend.
Was that the
How
80s?
was the transition?
You know,
When
what's-
did you
what's,
transition?
Well, the transition came after Sharon and I got married. We started ghost hunting, and we worked a case that didn't really know what we were doing. We did a Ouija board session, and obviously I didn't close it out properly. Obviously the entity there wasn't one that I should have provoked in that way, because it attached to us and followed us home and took up residence in our house for about 8 weeks. I didn't know how to deal with it, so I started reaching out into the paranormal community for help. Ultimately, I was introduced to my then mentor, who has since retired. She took me under her wing and walked me through how to battle this thing. And a couple of other exorcists that I was introduced to. All of a sudden it was bam, 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 all these cases started coming my way. And they just saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And that led to them saying, you should take our course and plan on becoming ordained, because this is, like I said, they saw something in me I didn't see. And so that's where the transition came. But, you know, Sharon was left from her attack with 3 very rare forms of cancer. Now, at the time, she's the healthiest person I knew. No history of cancer in her family, doesn't smoke, didn't drink. And so that was brutal. And
I remember all that even. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been friends long enough. I remember when you guys met, when you got married. And she never, you know, we'd go out and stuff, and you know, you and I, man, we'd be tipping like crazy, man. But she didn't drink. She, you know, she was always.
that was a
straight,
bad
you know,
time.
straight up.
So
Yeah.
it was meant to be. And then I worked about 9 straight, for lack of a better term, demonic cases in a row. And looking back, we believe that it was the same. This was a pack of demons that traveled, because everybody in all the 9 cases either knew each other professionally or personally, and they all reached out to me for help. Well, that led to me having a very violent demonic encounter on a case that was so scary I left the field. I said, I'm done. God, I can't handle this anymore. It's just not, it's not for me. And I left the field for about a year. Turned down a ton of cases.
Is that in here as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one day a pastor friend of mine called me up and said, I have a case that I really need your help with. And I didn't want to go. But she kept bugging me and bugging me and bugging me. I went on the case with her. Do you remember the old movie, the old original black and white version of The Wolfman with Lon Chaney?
Yes. Yeah.
I remember the gypsy woman, Malerva.
Yeah. Yeah.
We knock on this
Kind
door,
of, yeah.
and the door opens up, and I'm staring at Malerva. I'm like, this isn't going to be good. She's from the old country. I can barely understand her. She says I have demons in my luggage, and I look over there, and the luggage is moving around. It's making noises and stuff. I'm like, this lady's killed a kid, and it's got the kids. She's got
Or
some cats in her
There's some
something.
cockroaches underneath moving the luggage around.
But it was like a dungeon in her apartment. Windows were wide open, but it was dark like nighttime in there. You could see your breath. The stench was just off the charts. I just knew that there was something not right. So we actually took the luggage. Everything the woman owned in her life was in this luggage, and she just wanted it out of her house. She said, whatever you do, though, don't just toss it in the trash or open it up, because the demon will come out and attach to you, or it'll come right back to me. If you throw it in the trash, someone's going to find the luggage, because it was nice luggage.
Yeah.
And she had chains around it and everything. It was trippy.
How'd she get it in there?
I don't know. She trapped it somehow.
That would have been my first question.
Jeez.
So
Jeez.
I drove up to this church,
Probably alcohol.
got the priest to come out and do a makeshift. Matter of fact, that would be a great business, drive-up exorcism. I just drove up to his church, backed up, honked, opened up the trunk, called him ahead of time. He came out, did an exorcism on his luggage. And I took the luggage back to the woman, and she thought she was never going to see me again. So to show back up with her luggage again and everything she owned in life, and she could tell that there was something different about that stuff. She was so grateful. But we decided to have a prayer circle right in the middle of the living room before I left. The pastor, me, and this woman. And it was during this prayer session that I had, some people say it was St. Michael. I stand firm that I saw the Holy Spirit in a vision at this place. And I remember not telling either one of them about it, and it wasn't until I got home that I released it. Realized what had happened, and I was able to release. I was just uncontrollable tears and just what just happened to me. I called up my pastor friend. She was driving on the freeway. Told her what happened. She actually had to pull over on the side of the freeway, get out, and I hear all this noise going on. I'm like, what are you doing? She goes, I'm dancing around my car. She goes, I am so freaking jealous of you. I spent my whole life in, working with Jesus and God and being a pastor, and you're the one that gets the stinking vision. So, and then, boom, like gangbusters, the next case was they say never do an exorcism on your own. Well, I was scared. Sharon, at this point, was so ill. I didn't know if every night we went to bed, pretty much, I was convinced I was going to wake up, she'd be dead the next morning. That's how bad it was. But I didn't she couldn't go to these cases. I had to go by myself. So I went to this one case, and that led me, it was a young boy who'd gotten possessed, and I had to do a makeshift quickie exorcism in the bedroom there. But I came under attack again, and it was just like the first attack. And during that, I had a vision of Christ on the cross in the room with us, and actually crawled over to him, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't hallucinating, because when I was first hit by whatever hit me, I dropped to my knees, and when I woke up, I walk into a bedroom and I wake up, now I'm in the desert. And I thought somebody mugged me at first. But I still see the little kid sitting in the dirt 10 feet from me. And I looked over, and there was the cross. And I don't know if I was on Calvary or not, but that was Jesus on the cross. I know it. He didn't resemble a man at all. He resembled like a completely mutilated, battered piece of meat hanging on a tree. Mm-hmm. But I knew it was him, and I crawled over to the cross, helped myself up. I remember to this day, his left foot was over his right. Now, every time I look at a crucifix, I always look at that. It doesn't matter if they're like that or the right or the left, but his left foot was over right. I remember kissing his foot and tasting all the, have you ever tasted dry blood? I can remember tasting the dry blood and the mud and dirt off his foot. Yeah. And I just got this flashback of when I was really young and being chased home by 3 big bullies that I was convinced were going to kill me when they caught me. And my dad worked about an hour and a half away. And this is in the middle of the day, but for some reason that day, he left work early, and these guys are about to get me, and my dad comes driving down the street. Pulls right in front of us, gets out. It would be TMI to tell you what he did to these 3 kids. But I had that vision, and I knew that I didn't have anything to worry about. That
Dad's
my
coming
dad
to save you.
Yeah. Turned around, finished the exorcism, got the kid out of the bedroom, and so it's like that scene from Godfather 3 where Pacino, right before he has his attack in the kitchen, he says, I thought I was out, and they keep pulling me back in. I called my mentors and said, they're not going to let me out of this, are they? No.
Not likely.
No,
and if you had a vision like that, that's a calling, Shawn. And if you got that, you're on the right path.
Well, I was still taking drugs and drinking at the time.
Well,
so this is what I did.
Which means
I
you
know
were
it
way
means nothing,
open.
but
You were way open.
what I did was I
mean
came home and I said, no more. I said to God, I said, I can't do it any longer, because I want to know for a fact that I'm really seeing this and really experiencing this. I said, show me that you have the power right now. And I want to wake up tomorrow and I want to have another drink. I don't want to have another drink. I don't want to take another toke off a joint. I don't want to take no more of Sharon's pain pills. They'd make her so sick. I said, well, they're here anyhow. I'll take one. Fentanyl patches, whatever it was. Yeah. I said, I don't want to do it. I woke up the next morning. I haven't touched anything since.
Nothing since.
Do I miss a cold beer? Was I like? Did I almost steal her beer from her tonight? Yes, I did.
Temptation.
Shawn,
but that's part of it.
I was like, shame. Bud Light. Shame.
I know, right? That's not temptation.
It's like I got some blessed kosher wine that I used that I had turned into the blood of Christ that I use, and people joke me all the time. Go, you must drink a lot of Christ's blood, don't you? Because it tastes so good when I have communion at home. I haven't. I changed that following day. And so what I did was I took a page out of my mom's story, like she crawled on her hands and knees to church. I did that one night. Well, I thought for sure Cher was going to die that night. And I went to this all-night prayer chapel around the corner, and I crawled on my hands and knees all the way up to the altar, and I made the same deal with God. I said, I'm in for the long haul, but I'm not going to do it alone. You can't take Cher right now, because, take me instead, but you can't take her because she doesn't deserve it. And I felt responsible because I drug her into the whole ghost hunting thing anyway. I thought it was my fault that I got her into that situation. Yeah. And so we recently found out she wasn't supposed to survive. Oh, wow. So this was extreme divine intervention that stepped in, and come on, man. She couldn't talk for 6 months, couldn't even swallow water, had a feeding tube in for over a year, went from 135, 140 pounds to 95. They had to put her in isolation ward for a while, 35 straight treatments of radiation, 8 weeks of chemo, which almost killed her. They said she's not going to make it, but so that's all divine intervention. For sure.
It is. I believe that.
The husband of a producer that hired me for Body Rock, the movie, introduced me to her husband. He was producing a very popular detective show at the time, which was on TV, but he also had a private investigative company and specializing in finding lost children of the rich and famous, who most of them were down there on the streets of Hollywood. And at the time I had a mohawk, and a well-known street dancer, and down there all the time partying. So he said, you'd be perfect to go down there and just be you and find out who's where.
Just blend in.
And I had just the most god-awful that I write about in the book, where I'm at the end of an alley, down probably where you wouldn't even go today in L.A., bad area, looking for some homeless kids, and I'm convinced I got cornered, trapped in this alley by demons, and it was either another guardian angel, or it might have been St. Michael himself, that just some friendliest guy, seemed like it was the middle of the night, the only one that had a tiny little spotlight on him, showed up out of nowhere, put his arm around me, and didn't have to say another word, and just walked me out of this alley. And it was like partying in the Red Sea. These people were crawling around on all fours growling at me. And they parted like the Red Sea for us to get out of the alley. And when we got to the end of the alley, I went to say something to him, and he was gone.
Oh, man.
I called this gentleman. I said, I'm sorry, but I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know what happened to me, but I don't want to do this anymore. But I did find some kids for them, which don't know if they were actually returned to their families, but that was a very interesting time. So it's just one incident after another, which led me to doing what I'm doing now. Writing the book helped me put all the pieces together and realize it was always just a gigantic puzzle. Yeah. And writing the book put it all together for me, and that just blew me away.
Book writing's good then.
It's hard. I'm not Stephen King, and it's not going to be on the New York Times bestseller list. But there might be another one down the road. I'm working on a couple of projects, but it's really hard,
We've been talking about your book and everything that's going on there. So I had a question about that. In that, a lot of times, we see the difference between what people think of as ghosts and what people think of as maybe what might be angels or demons, rather than human. What were human. Originating entities, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. So I've always been interested in more of the angel aspect of that and how they influence and affect our lives, And I understand that you've got kind of a story about that in the book.
Yes, I do. Well, I'm a big fan of and believer in guardian angels and angels. A lot of people don't know this. I do talk about it in the book, but my guardian angel, and I'm going to call her that, looks just like Susan Sarandon.
Back in the day?
back in the Rocky Horror Picture times.
Hopefully.
And this is a true story. I was drowning in the ocean once in Southern California, caught in a riptide. And I was trying to climb up on a rock, and I was cutting all my knees and my feet and my hands all up. I couldn't get up on this rock, and every time I'd start to almost get up, another big wave would hit me, and then the riptide would start pulling me out. Finally, a voice said, "Swim this way." And I looked over, and there's this girl. I see her head bobbing up and down in the water. She says, "Swim this way." I just knew to swim that way. And I just barely got in her direction, and the water got so calm, and it was so easy for me to just swim right back into shore. There was a lifeguard waiting for me because he was getting ready to come out and save me. He said, "I knew you were in trouble." And I go, "Where'd the girl go that helped me?" He goes, "There's nobody out there with you. You were by yourself." That's why I was getting ready to come out there. I go, "The girl that swam with me all the way up to the shore here." He goes, "Dude, you were all by yourself out there." So I saw her one more time many years later. I was driving home quite drunk. Several buddies tried to keep my keys from me. And so now I got my keys back. And I was driving home in my truck late at night on the See Me freeway in Southern California on my way home. And apparently I fell asleep at the wheel. But I was weaving in and weaving around, and a highway patrolman was just getting ready to pull me over. That probably would have been the better thing, because all of a sudden he said, "You just turned right and we're going right to go off a cliff." Yeah. And I don't remember any of that, but I remember somebody yelling at me, "Wake up!" And I was leaning to my right, and I saw same girl sitting in my truck staring at me. I looked up, saw the cliff, fishtailed, donutted right to the edge of the cliff, headed back over across all the lanes on the freeway, head-on collision with the center divider, flipped end over end on the other side of the freeway. They had to cut me out with the jaws of life. Engines in the seat where I used to be sitting. Roof is all the way down on top of that. How I survived that, I don't know, but that's twice now that she saved my life that I know of. Yeah. And people think I've only been ordained a few years. I just got on this path since my wife and I got married, but the story goes way back, and it has to do with my father. He's a descendant of a long line of warriors for Christ dating way back into Scotland, and he was 25-year retired Master Chief, served in World War II, Korea, Purple Heart recipient. He was in the Philippines when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. They were ordered to leave the island because they knew the Japanese were going to hit there next, so they took off in their ship, which was called the USS Pecos. Several hours out to sea, they encountered the enemy, came under attack. They were sunk. My dad went in the water, hanging onto a little piece of wood, probably 4 o'clock that afternoon. Hung onto that wood the rest of the day, into the night, the whole night. And now he's bobbing up and down in the water. You know, who knows what you're drinking, all the stuff that's on top of that water. Yeah. He's violently ill, no strength left. He hears a ship coming. The amazing thing was all ships were ordered not to go back for survivors. Too much enemy in the area. Mm-hmm. One captain named Captain Abernathy, and I forget the name of his ship, chose to disregard orders and go back, or my father wouldn't still. Well, there's two reasons why my father wouldn't be here if Abernathy didn't go back, but they were taking sailors aboard. My father was not strong enough to get to the ship, and he heard the loudspeaker say, "Prepare to get underway." And he thought, well, they're going to drag me back dead, but they're not going to leave me here. And he grabbed a hold of a rope he found laying in the water, and had tied it all around himself, and actually felt the tension get tight and start being pulled through the water. Heard a voice say, "There's one more over the side," a deep voice. And he looked up, and he saw a very large, muscular sailor jump over the side of the ship, and hanging on with one arm, reached down, grabbed my dad by the scruff of his neck, just tossed him on the ship. My dad said when I hit the deck, I passed out for about 4 to 8 hours. When I woke up, I was under a little makeshift tent. The corpsmen were taking care of me, but when I was well enough to get to my feet, he scoured that ship to find this sailor to thank him for saving his life. And no, he could not find one sailor that fit the description, one sailor that admitted to being the one that did it, no sailors that even knew of anybody on that ship that fit that description, no sailor that even saw the incident. It was like 1 second my dad wasn't there, the next second he's on the deck of the ship. So my dad was convinced all his life that was an angel that saved his life. Fast forward, he's already married my mother in Brazil. I had my 2 younger sisters. They moved back to the States. They're living on a naval base in Northern California. My father goes out to sea, contracts spinal meningitis and syphilitis, among some other things, and he was dying. Got back to the base. My mom got a phone call from the doctor. If you want to see your husband alive again, come now. He's not going to make it till morning. So she got a babysitter. On the way to the hospital, she stopped at the church on base and made a deal with God. And we talked earlier about making a deal with God. You can do that. Yeah. Like, my deals don't work out so good because I'm like, God, if you just let me win the lottery, the Publishers Clearinghouse, give half the winnings to
You
Catholic
have to play. God's like, you have to play, dude.
Well, we do play PCH.
It's not even that, man. If it's about money, it probably ain't gonna work, you know?
Well, I offered to give half the winnings to Catholic charities.
I know. But,
So I'm still waiting. But she went in and said she wasn't supposed to have any more children because the birth of my second oldest sister was not good at all, and they knew that another pregnancy, her and or the baby probably wouldn't last, so they had no plans for children. She promised God, if you spare my husband's life, she prayed to him through St. Jude to petition on my father's behalf. If you save his life, I will, from this point on, whenever I go to church, I'll do it on my hands and knees, and I'll have another child. Well, she went to the hospital, fell asleep at my dad's bedside, woke up that morning. My dad's just sitting up, handcuffed to the bed. Edith, what am I doing handcuffed to this bed in the hospital? Doctors rushed in, they ran all these tests on him, couldn't find anything wrong with him, no signs of any of the diseases that he had. So she kept her end of the bargain. From that day on until she was too old and physically unable to do it, whenever she went to church, she did it on her hands and knees. And she did have another child. Ta-da! Yours truly. So my mom told me at a very young age, one day you're going to do something great for God. And I had no clue what that was. And I realized that several years back when Sharon and I encountered our first demonic case. After many cases, finally ran into the mother lode, a bad demonic case that resulted in a severe demonic attack that she went through, resulting in 3 very rare forms of cancer, which we're still fighting. But I reached out, got a mentor who was an exorcist, got a couple of other mentors who were exorcists. They helped me fight this thing out of our house. And they saw something in me that I didn't see and said, you need to take our course, graduate it, get your bachelor's in Christian Spiritual Warfare Ministries, and you need to go on and become ordained because you are, you're totally different when you're on, when you're in battle and helping people in these cases, and you need to do this. So I went on from that point and became ordained. So I wish it was a quick answer. That's the abridged version. But it goes. I have to give props to how I wouldn't be here to do it if my father hadn't had his life saved.
Twice.
But there's something before that. I mean, we've traced to the French knight who we believe was a Templar that got out of, his maiden name was Le Fleming, who got out of France into northern Scotland, started Clan Douglas. Clan Douglas became Clan Whittingham. Clan Whittingham became Clan Whittington. Then the Whittingtons got Whittington, England. And it's believed under Whittington Castle was the Holy Grail, and they had ties to the Knights of the Round Table and all
that's
that.
what we were talking about earlier. Yeah,
So it's,
Arthurian
there's just, it's all in the book.
As it should be.
As it should be.
Yep.
And,
It should be. Are you gonna
So
do
this is some very interesting stuff. So I would say, if you're interested in finding out more, by all means, buy the book, man. This is some.
And you also do a radio show.
Yes.
oh,
Yeah, we didn't talk
Let's
about
not. Yeah,
that.
we
I
did
still
not
do
talk
that
about
show?
that.
Yeah. What's it been, 4 years
oh, I'm
now?
spent
4 years?
4 year anniversary
Yeah.
coming up on October 15th this year. Every Monday night from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific on KCORradio.com. I am the host of Vegas Supernatural Paranormal Radio Show. And I have a different guest every Monday night. And I guess the show's still doing good. They haven't kicked me off the air yet. So
Now, how do you get this? You have to go on to KCOR. You got to tell these people
go
how
on
they can find
every
it.
Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific. Go online, log on to www.kcorradio.com. When you get to the home page, just click on Listen Live and Play, and you'll hear me talking and making a fool out of myself and trying to act like a radio host, and I
Like-
have
like
no clue what
Oprah.
I'm doing. And talking to somebody that's in the paranormal field. I try to bring in somebody from every branch under the paranormal community umbrella, whether you're a demonologist, exorcist, ufologist. I got a great Bigfoot guy coming on this Monday.
So, and then there's the back
Anything-
episodes you can listen to too.
Yeah, you can download the archives of
still
all the
free?
episodes.
Or
They're
is
still free.
That's cool.
And if you're in the need of a certified spiritual advisor, intuitive coach, go to reverendshawn.com. Just finished my training in that. And I'm also teaching 2 courses in paranormal studies, online courses through the Worldwide Bible College and Theological Seminary. If you're interested in that, you can go to ShawnLVNV@hotmail.com and discuss if you got what it takes. I'm not training exorcists, but if you want to learn how to draw your line in the sand and stand up to the bullies, let's call them that for now, the paranormal gangsters, then I teach people how to do that. Knowledge is power.
Yes.
It is. That's true.
Are you
I'll
gonna
tell
write
you
that
what.
down?
You guys want to hear more, or you want to read more about some of this stuff, man? Here it is, right here.
Read the book.
Read the book.
Read
Man,
the
it's
book.
it's
On
no different
Amazon.
than anything
We'll give you
else.
a link for it.
If you want to learn, you read.
Did it record
That's
the
how
part
it goes.
about some of my clients seeing the ghost at home?
No.
There's
No,
not
you
a
have to-
movie about it yet,
Let me-
so if
let
you
me-
want to learn more about this,
Let
you
me
got
warn
to
you
read
about
about
something.
it.
I would feel that I wasn't doing my job if I didn't at least throw this out there, make your own decision. You can get the book on Amazon and Kindle. You can also get autographed author's copies off of ghostbegone.biz website. Now those books I keep in my home, which is haunted, and I actually lay hands on them and sign them and ship them out to you. But I have had 3 readers reach out to me since St. Patrick's Day that have seen the entity that I have a picture of in this book, who appears as, it could be a little boy, possibly a little girl. They've actually seen, after getting this book, have seen that apparition in their homes. And something I never have revealed before, that her apparition precedes a doppelganger of somebody in the family, which they said that has happened too. So I just thought that's interesting. I don't think there's anything to fear there, but for those of you that buy autographed copies from the website, be aware that the book might come with a little more than you expect. But
Like a little
it's
weird
God,
mirror
Ghosts, and the
image
Paranormal
thing.
Ministry. What do you expect? It is a scary book. Be careful, but it's a feel-good story, a different kind of feel-good story also. And I think it's got something for everybody, and it's a timeless book.
Yep. Moquata style. Scared the poop out of you though.
Sounds like it might be interesting.
Well, you gotta read it now. You're behind.
Well, apparently, huh?
Yeah. Into the mind.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Gotta
thank
get
you,
my
Shawn.
face out of the tech.
Had a
stuff
good meal
for a little
tonight.
bit.
We hardly ever get to see each other.
Yeah.
Got to talk about the book a little bit. I'm not going anywhere until I hear you guys play your song.
All right.
And
All right.
I'm going to leave you some food you didn't want to eat before you sang.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
going to leave you a plate of food before we go.
Oh no, I don't. I totally believe that. It looked like it was delicious and it smelled fantastic.
And this is going to be the first video on my
It
new.
was delicious.
Yeah.
This is the first video on my new Reverend Shawn Whittington's Paranormal Ministry YouTube page. I saved it. It's been up for a while, but I didn't put anything on it till we did this. I wanted this to be the first.
So we hope you all enjoy the video. We especially hope you enjoyed this this interview. The Rev, Shawn. I know you as Shawn, so but we've known each other a long time, and I think he's got some pretty good stories to tell. So this may just be well worth a good read.
Yes, you will read it.
Upside?
You will
Oh,
read
that's
it.
not upside down,
No,
okay.
that's not.
I will.
I took the picture.
Yeah, I'll read it.
She did take the picture.
Yeah.
And that's my family castle in the background.
Family castle.
And I just recently found out that they tied in the Whittington Castle and the Lords of Whittington actually too. Knights of the Round Table, and they believe that under
Really?
Whittington Castle was. I'll send you
Wow.
the link to a Smithsonian Channel investigator did a whole hour piece on it,
No
and they
kidding.
think the Holy Grail was buried under my family castle, and that Percival was there with the Lords of Whittington protecting the Grail.
Because they've never proven
I'm gonna send you this
100%
thing.
that the
It's a
whole
really-
Arthurian
I
legend
didn't
is
know.
real.
Yeah, I didn't know all of that.
There's a lot of people believe that the whole story is based on reality, and I think it might be too. You know, but they've never proven it yet. They're still working on trying to,
That's really
you know,
You'll like that.
be
I'll
able
send
to-
it
Buy
to
the
you
book,
to your
Amazon.
Facebook page.
Okay,
That,
I'll go look.
Amazon.
You know me.
it's
I'll go.
Smithsonian Channel. I think it's about King Arthur,
Yeah.
that particular episode. But at the very end, like the last 20 minutes or so, is all about the White Castle, which they revealed was Whittington Castle, and
That's
the Lords
pretty
of
cool.
Whittington had ties to the.
I would
Knights of the
totally
Round
be
Table.
interested to see that.
It blew me away when
All right,
a
we
friend
got
of mine in England sent it to me.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Say goodbye, Gracie.
3, 2, peace.